Today I talked to Bernie about diagnosing the difference between a toxic person and toxic behavior. Today's episode is brought to you by MyGo where you can build funnels and website all from one location. Easy to use, drag and drop builder. Build your first funnel today. Fully customized checkout experience, 14-day free trial, no credit card needed. Welcome back, everybody, to today's episode of Clicks and Bricks. My name is Ken. Today I have Bernie Beck Jr. He's the co-owner of Dramatic Conclusions, a business consulting firm that really focuses on family-owned businesses in that $5 to $50 million range. How you doing today, Bernie?
Doing fantastic, Ken. Thank you very much for having me.
Can you give us a little bit deeper dive into your company, what you guys do specifically, who you help out, and really what it is that makes your coaching program special?
Okay. So again, thanks for having me. Dramatic Conclusions was founded by my wife 20 years ago. And since that time, she's been doing speaking, coaching, and training work domestically and internationally. She's presented in all 50 states. And I effectively joined her in this quest from 2010 going forward, as my time had been spent in the corporate world for almost 30 years. And at that point, I wanted to get into what I really enjoyed, which was developing people, training, coaching, and leading organizations, helping them to grow. So we've been working together and very intensely from about 2014 on. As you mentioned, we concentrate on small to medium-sized businesses, typically call it $3 to maybe the $50 million range. Businesses that have often hit the ceiling as far as they can go and grow, and they need some help moving forward. So through coaching, consulting, creating a strategic business plan, we help them achieve double-digit sales growth, and most importantly, drive their net profits, increase their net profits.
Right. So that's probably, on the lower side, 10 employees, on the high side, 100 employees. Roughly in that range?
Yeah, that's a great call out, Ken. It's typically 10 to probably 50.
10 to 50. Okay.
Right.
That's a good number. So if you're running a business or if you're starting a business and you're growing a business, like 2 to 4 employees, man, not that big of a deal. When you hit 10, stuff starts to get a little weird. That 50, shit is just way out of control. And I've gone as high as 700. And I just don't like that world. It's not a world that I like to play in. I like to keep under 50. Right now I'm at 40, and it's just a really sweet spot for me personally. I like it. It's manageable. Not too many silos that I have to deal with, right? So what are some of the like stupid obvious things that you see kind of on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's first of all, let me validate what you said from a standpoint of maneuverability. An organization reaches a certain point where it's hard to steer the ship in a different direction. So when you get to those multiple silos, it's very difficult to influence change. And oftentimes we need to stay changing, be current with the marketplace, et cetera. So you're spot on with that. In terms of like the tools and the processes, business typically, oftentimes, first of all, they don't have an awareness about their financial health. Now, P&Ls and balance sheets aren't necessarily sexy, but they're the most important part of your business. And a lot of business owners don't want to hear that. I've honestly had businesses I've worked with, and I ask them on a monthly basis, let's talk about your financials. How are your P&Ls looking? What's our gross profit margin? What's our net profit looking like? Let's look at the expense lines. And it's absolute deer in the headlights. Some businesses get their P&Ls and balance sheets on an annual basis. So it's basically like Christmas. I've completed the year, and now I'm going to open up the portfolios and see what I got, money or not. And I'm like, that's not a good way to manage your business. Right. And I can't tell you how many businesses I've worked with, over 20 businesses in Australia in particular, where I'd spent from 2014 through 2019 coaching. And it's amazing how many times I would go into a new client and find that they get their P&Ls either on an annual or semi-annual basis. And that was the extent of it. Right. And so immediately we got them into monthly P&Ls, reviews. Where's your financial health? What's going well? Expense controls. and start educating them on that part of the business, which it's
Right.
scary and intimidating if you don't know it. But once you understand it, it's like, okay, that's not that big of a deal.
Right. So I go both ways. I have two businesses. One, and I'm a cash kid, right? I really like just managing my cash flow. So I'm methodical in both businesses about my cash flow, right? Every single morning, my first hour of every single day is, and I say checkbook, and people like imagine with a little checkbook, but no, it's a pretty big spreadsheet, right, with multiple tabs and all that stuff. But that I've put together over the last 20 years. I put together these spreadsheets on how I manage that daily cash flow, which is a challenge by itself. But, I've got a multi-million-dollar company, and I've got, a small little $500,000 company that me and my wife run together. And I don't do my P&Ls there. I run that entire business on cash. But my larger company, we do P&Ls every single month, right? Now they're running 30 days behind, which I yell at my accountant for all the time. Like, why can't I get them the week after the month starts, right? But I think that task, even on a multi-million-dollar company, if you have an account and you get your P&L, it's a 1-hour task each month. Is that pretty accurate? So
absolutely.
That's how fast you should get it down.
And frankly, Ken, you can get it done quicker than that once you get into a flow and a rhythm.
Well, yeah, but you got to eat the donuts and have the coffee and have the conversation, right?
That's it. Yeah. If you're into the donut thing, then that's okay.
If the accountant's going to bring the donuts, then you have to eat.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
So that's
a once a month. Cash.
Yeah. So, that's a once a month kind of thing on your P&L that you should be looking at. And my gut says, if you're 250 to 500,000 a year, you can manage that almost like a household budget. Right? It's just a big household budget. But once you hit that $500,000 a year marker and you start having property that you have to amortize and things like that, it starts really getting important to get in the habit. So if your business, my advice is when you get to $500,000, not if, when you get to $500,000, start at least doing quarterly P&Ls and then bring that to monthly as you continue to grow, because it gets more important and stuff can creep really, really fast on you if you're not watching it, right?
That's right. And I think that's very sound advice. A couple of comments on what you said. I've pressed my businesses to get their P&Ls by the 7th or 8th day following month end. And it becomes a chore. They're like, you can't really be serious with that. And eventually, once we condition the accountant to that expectation and have an agreement, it starts happening.
Right.
And so that sense of urgency, again, it's a lead and lag measure. The P&Ls and balance sheet, the party's over. So, but we want to get that information as soon as we can, close to month end. So if there are any surprises, accounts receivables issues, cash flow issues, expense control issues, we can react to it as quickly and as close to month end as possible.
Yeah, and I find, and you could probably clarify here because you probably deal with more companies' financials than I do, right? I just have my company's financials that I deal with. Stuff like just the one number of deferred revenue, and I think every business has deferred revenue, not knowing that one number can drastically change your life, right? Because that's your deferred revenue. For me, that's like my next month's marketing budget. It's my next month's, show budget. It's all of those things, right? So just knowing, and if you have any kind of business other than just straight retail, I think you probably have some deferred revenue. Even the gyms that we deal with have deferred revenue.
That's right. And you've got from a cash flow forecasting standpoint, it's critical to be aware of that.
Absolutely.
And to maintain that visibility.
And there's a lot of numbers in there that you should know, but really you should define your KPIs and talk to your accountant, talk to your coach, whoever you need to, really define those KPIs really down to just what you got to look at, 10, 15 minutes. Okay, I've got a good idea of the companies, where we're headed. Is it turning up, turning down, and run, or, oh, shoot, we need to hire a collections guy because we have way too much deferred revenue, right? Or it's starting to get 60, 90, 100 days out. So
exactly, yeah. And you've got to be aware of that 30-day principle and really be religious about it. You mentioned KPIs, and we talk about these smaller businesses. That's another area that is an enormous opportunities. The both KPIs, key performance indicators, and SLAs, or service level agreements. A lot of these smaller businesses don't have those clearly defined and established for every team member in the organization. And
absolutely.
And it's a real challenge for them because they're not familiar with it to come up with those. One of the clients I'm working with right now, I'm literally taking over the process of establishing and documenting what the KPIs and SLAs are going to be for each of their employees. It's a task they've been working on for some time, and they just couldn't get enough acceleration into it. So I took it over for them and basically conduct one-on-one Zooms with each of the team members, understand who they are, what they do, what's important from their perspective. And then we have an agreed upon KPI or SLA that we can hold them accountable to, and then ultimately performance manage them going forward.
KPIs are vital for your business in every single aspect of your business. I found personally, and you can maybe confirm or deny this, I have found that specifically for sales departments, tech departments, all of those things, it's the manager's job to develop the KPIs for the team. You can't tell the team, hey, give me your KPIs, what's important to you, because you get just all across the board. You get a whole laundry list of things that aren't important, or you get just one number that they say this is the holy grail number for everything. So you really have to take some time and go into, and I think you're suggesting every single employee should have a KPI and an SLA, and I do that at department level.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. It's a great call out.
Okay.
Sales is easy, right? You've got, what are your total sales?
You're the first person to ever say that.
Yeah. Oh, no. It's very straightforward. And depending on
the winning or losing is very straightforward. It's more straightforward than anywhere else. That's right. It is, right? But there's a lot of nuance in that, in my opinion. But I would love to hear your input.
So, like, I think of a standard sales organization within an organization, and you've got your sales target, you've got your open orders, you've got the quotes that have been generated. And those are some of the common KPIs. It might be the number of calls you've actually completed, whether that's a physical call, a virtual call, a phone call. There's a number of things you can track. And to your point, we want to get down to probably the 2 or 3 most important. You can't measure everything. You don't want to measure everything. So take those 2 or 3 items that are really going to be critical to the success of your role in the business. And that's what we're going to concentrate on. And then that said, for sales organization or marketing, it's fairly easy to realize what's the most important things that are the drivers of the business of this particular area. You get into some of the administrative areas, like somebody who's maybe in procurement, or somebody who's in accounting, or somebody who is an office assistant of some type. They still want to know if they're winning or losing.
Right.
And the only way we can do that is have some kind of standards in place so they understand, here's where the goalposts are, here's the rules of the game, and then ultimately, here's how we're going to know if you're winning or losing. We're going to measure you on this maybe one KPI, and maybe there's a service level agreement of my emails will be current every day, or all phone calls are returned within 2 hours, or whatever it might be. So some of those other areas, it's a little trickier than it would be with sales or marketing or some of the more obvious areas.
Right. And then, so any expert that you talk to or any investor is going to say, know your numbers. They're going to harp on that at depth, right? So my trick for that is to develop my KPIs and then automate the heck out of them, right? So work with your IT team. If you use QuickBooks, you can pull that data out of QuickBooks. I wake up every single morning to an email in my inbox that is how much I billed yesterday, how much I collected yesterday, how much invoices I currently have that are pending to be paid, how much cash is in my bank. Those 4 things. I wake up and I also have how many new orders yesterday and how many canceled yesterday, right? So that's in my inbox every single morning now. Was it hard to get there? Yeah, but I did the work like 10 years ago, and I've got my finger on the pulse at all times, right? So I wake up in the morning and I get that email. I know my numbers. So if I get a call from my board or a shareholder or any of those things, I at least have the confidence that I can tell them, this is where we're at for this month, this is where we ended last month, right? And I do that on a cash basis, not a P&L basis, which is slightly different. You talk to your accountants to know what the difference is there. But it can get fun, right? Absolutely. It doesn't have to be this boring task of accounting. You can gamify it, right?
Exactly. There's an old saying, you've mentioned cash a couple of times, cash is king. Right. So they say that sales is vanity and profit is sanity, but cash is king. And so at the end of the day, knowing your numbers, that's a no-brainer. That said, it's another one of those things that is challenging for some businesses, even with businesses that can grow to the $20, $25 million level. You mentioned earlier all the things that are going on. Sometimes they get caught up in that whirlwind and then they lose sight of their numbers. And that's where, as a coach, oftentimes I'm bringing them back to reality when we do our weekly or fortnightly meetings. It's like, guys, where are we at with this metric, that metric? And they're like, well, we don't know. And well, okay.
How often do you think that, and I know that I've been victim of this. I've been my own victim many times in my life. I use the phrase that I have to learn the same lesson at least 5 times or it doesn't really sink in. There's been times that I've just been afraid to look at the checkbook that day or open the bank account. So I just didn't, right? And that's horrible habits, right? And how frequently do you see businesses just literally ignoring the monster in the park because they're just afraid to look at it?
I don't think it's so much a fear factor as it is a discipline and self-accountability factor.
Okay.
I think especially with some of these smaller businesses, they get caught up in so many things. And again, that whirlwind of all the stuff that goes on, especially with technology, the way it's evolved the last 20 years, it's a whole different world and things are moving faster than ever. And so consequently, it's easy to get distracted by any number of things. And, I have a rule of thumb when I teach attention management sessions to clients that when you're planning your workday, I call it the 50% rule. Basically, you can plan about 50% of your day. And if you plan beyond that, it's not going to happen because the interruptions, the surprises, other things that happen that you weren't planning on, they're going to happen. And then you're just going to be carrying things over to the next. So you got to be realistic in how you spend your time, how you manage your time, how you plan your day. And again, you can't, it's like the book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, talks about really narrowing down to a few lead and lag measures. You can't control everything all the time, every day. So let's figure out what's the most, Brian Tracy said, what's the most important thing you have to do today? Right. And try and keep them on track with that. And again, when we do our weekly debriefs, it's like, I'll send them an agenda, say, okay, here's the 6 things we're going to talk about this week. Be prepared. And it just helps keep them on track all the time. And again, a lot of what we do as a business coach is holding that business accountable to their own goals that they've established.
Absolutely. I think that's wildly important for businesses. So obviously, and you specialize, I just want to take back for your scheduling, your 50% scheduling. So I schedule my meetings like my podcast every day. And then I schedule my first hour. Chris knows my schedule better than I do. Hour and a half, I think, is I call it my feed the animals time. And I don't know where I got that phrase. I got it from some book, but it's old farmers would wake up and they'd feed the animals. So I look at that as my feed the animals time. I got to come in. I got to say hi to my staff. I have to balance my checkbook. I've got to do those things. And it's like that first hour and a half is maybe 10-minute tasks that I do. And I'd call that the stuff like, walking in the building. After that, I schedule these meetings and I schedule some time to check my email and clean that stuff up. But that's about the only things that I schedule on a daily recurring basis, right? That stuff that has to be done no matter what, that utility work, and then from there, the other stuff. So, and get that utility work down to an hour. Get it way down fast, right?
Well, and that's a great point. What you've done, Ken, is you've created a disciplined habit. It's something that, for instance,
methodical, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And guess what? You get that done, and now you don't have to worry about it the rest of the day. You can carry on with business and concentrate on what's important because that's all behind you, and it's not running through your mind that, I still got to get A, B, and C done because it's already done.
Yeah, one of my biggest fears is the shareholder calling me and me not knowing the question to an answer that he has. Right?
Absolutely.
You can ask anybody on my staff. If that's my most frustrating day. Is like they called me, they asked me this question, I didn't have an answer for them. That means that I'm not doing my job, and that can't continue to happen. Like it can happen sometimes, but it can't continue to happen on a regular basis. So those things are so important, and getting those down to, minimal effort on your part, to where you just know the numbers, and your team can help you with this. They can write scripts. They can have this data sitting in your inbox first thing in the morning. They're not going to understand why you're asking for it, and that's okay. Just tell them you need it, and they'll get it for you, right? Just talk to your staff. They'll figure it out. Just tell them you need these numbers in my inbox every morning, and they'll figure it out for you.
And you make a great point, Ken, about the automation piece, which, again, that's such an obvious thing to do. Automate it so it's right there, available for you. There's going to be some short-term pain for the long-term gain of having it there. You mentioned 10 years. So, 10 years into work, you've got the information at your fingertips. And I still
tweak it. Right? It still tweaks here and there. There's new things that come up and stuff like that, right? But it's just tweaks now. It's not overhauls.
That's right. And business is dynamic, so that makes sense. Right. And yet it's amazing, again, with all the technology that's available out there, how many businesses still run very primitively. They run on spreadsheets or whatever else. Right. And, automation, as you mentioned, is so important to growing a business.
And it's real easy today, folks, or it's accessible today. It's not super easy. There is some knowledge that you have to have, but it is doable. It is so doable today with some of the technology out there. And you can reach out to Bernie or I for help on that realm. If you need help doing those things, either one of us can probably help you through that journey of automating those KPI tasks. So you specialize in that, small, medium-sized business, 5 to 50 million, under 50 employees, a lot of family-oriented businesses. So there's no doubt that you're no stranger to adversity, right? And you probably have a lot of tips and tricks. So if you're going into, if you have a specific story you'd like to tell about adversity and how you overcame it, or something really common that you see in these businesses, and the number one tip or trick that you would give that business, just to try to create as much value as we can for this short amount of time that we're on here for small businesses that may not, that under 5 million guy could really benefit from.
Yeah. So the family business aspect is very unique because you may have a father in the business, you may have some sons and daughters in the business, and for 8 or 10 hours a day they're working together. And then oftentimes they're going home together or spending the weekend together. So it's very challenging to hold your family members accountable, upward and downward, for responsibilities at work, knowing that you're going to have to spend that evening or the weekend with them. And that dynamic is I can be empathetic with that situation. And that's where basically I can come in, and Pam does a lot. My wife, Pam, she's working with clients right now in Australia on this very issue, and where you've got family dynamics that literally could cripple the business if they don't get past the situation. And so we'll find ourselves oftentimes working one-on-one with individual people in the business. And then most importantly, we want to get to a level of agreement on what the outcomes are going to be. Once we have everybody nodding their head saying, yes, we're willing to accept that target or that goal, that's one of the things we're going to concentrate on, and together we're going to work. It's easier to hold them accountable for their respective responsibilities in achieving whatever that goal is. And that said, with all the businesses, one of the things that is critical for me is I use a strategy on a page, basically one page with all the businesses, that identifies their big, hairy, audacious goal, where they want to be 5-10 years from now. What's their annual primary objective? What are those 2 or 3 critical, very important goals for the year? And then we break all of that down into quarterly chunks. So we basically go into each year with a strategic plan and the supporting tactics of what has to happen for them to achieve their goals. And that will include a budget being created for the year, which, again, many of these businesses have never had a financial budget going into the year. So we help them create a budget. So at least they know where they're starting and where we hope to end and how we're going to get there. And then that all requires accountability, the monthly P&L review, the monthly progress reviews. And it's easier to hold each other accountable in that environment when we all know, yes, this is where we want to go.
So I think to try to summarize all that, that was a lot of information. I think it's important to, one, visualize where you want your company to be, right? So where do we want to be in 3 months, 6 months, and a year from now? And then open the lines of communication with the entire company, right? Absolutely. Or at least the players that are in there, and start having those conversations. Once you agree on all those things, probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do inside of a family business was there was an employee that was just toxic for the company, right? It was very obvious that it was a hostile person, that they needed to leave the business. But, the CEO said, well, I have to have Christmas dinner with this person. I don't know how to fire them, right? Can we figure something else out? And we did for a long time. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience for everybody in the business. Probably the employee was, staying at that business because he had some kind of, weird loyalty that he thought that was being, benefiting the relative, but it was really hurting the relative. So it ended up being, once the separation happened, it was hard, but it got there. But open lines of communication is definitely how it got there, right? And it really got to the point where the CEO's like, well, I had to have Christmas dinner with this guy. Like, how am I going to fire him? So I'm going to leave and you do it, Ken.
And guess what? Oftentimes, I end up being the honesty broker and or dealing with tough situations for a business. And that's, you become a family counselor to some degree here. And,
sometimes.
What's interesting about that is there was a lot more pain to everybody involved when that toxic person was there. And once that toxic, this is my experience anyway, once that toxic person is eliminated, people start thinking, thank goodness, finally that's over with. Now we can move forward. And it creates a much better culture, a much better working environment. And to allow those toxic people to linger despite the circumstances is so detrimental for a business. And I understand it's hard to do, but
it might be that business might be the reason that person's toxic, right? I don't really believe in toxic people. I believe in toxic situations. And if they're having toxic behavior, it's probably because they're in the wrong position for them in their life, right? And so you're really doing them a favor, and it's hard to get there mentally because we have this association with we are what we do kind of thing. So, it's severing this weird part of our lives and you're doing it to somebody. It feels like it's really challenging. But if you have somebody that's toxic in your environment, it's probably the wrong environment for that person. That's what's causing that toxic behavior, right? So you're really doing them a favor by removing them from the situation.
I would agree. And frankly, in my experience, most of the time, they're grateful for being allowed to leave.
Right.
I can think of one scenario where actually the phrase was, what took you so long? That's like,
I've been trying to get fired for a year, you dummy.
Right. And it's like, oh, well, I finally got, willingness to do it. And so
right. It's challenging. It's really, really hard. And, I don't like the narrative of it's the American dream being a business owner, because I think there's a lot of American dreams, and I think new American dreams are being invented every single day. But owning a family-owned business is definitely an American dream, right? And it is challenging. It's hard. And sometimes you have weird commitments from people that you wouldn't have otherwise as just an employee. So be mindful of that. And, don't push family members to work for you because you need them, because you're going to ruin that relationship. And that relationship is important for you later down the road. That relationship of the family member is way more important than boss, employee, or coworkers, right? It is very, very important. So don't let that get in the way of your family, the family business.
Now it's prioritizing what's most important in your life. What are your core values and guiding principles? And certainly, hopefully, family is one of them.
I see too many business owners putting the business first over the family. And Arguably, I probably do it too, right? But I have an open line of communication with my wife and daughter, and my daughter tells me that she's fine with me not being home after work. So we'll continue doing what we're doing. But anyway, so everything's going great. We're through the adversity. We've got rid of all the toxic employees. The company's healing, right? Things are really starting to go good. I find a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, small business owners, family-owned business owners kind of go into a cruise control moment at that point, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, we made it. Everything's fine. We're making payroll every month. There's no arguments in the office every single day anymore. But I don't have the money. I don't have that money to spend on advertising, or I don't trust that it's going to come back to me. So how do you get people in the mindset of overcoming adversity and surviving? Because it's a different mindset. It's a different game completely on, okay, I've got my business up and running, and that's a fight in itself, right? It's a mammoth fight. 73% of businesses fail in the first 2 years, I think. So you're there. How do you convince a company or a business owner, CEO, founder to take that next risk go from a really nice business that's making everybody happy to being a great company?
Yeah, great question. And it's really changing the mindset from surviving to thriving. And with that being said, then I on a short-term basis, let's say short-term being 1 year, when we go into a new year, we're coming close to year end now, I look at the business owners and say, okay, come December 31st, 2022, you're going to look back at this past year, and I want you to tell me the one thing that you're going to look back and say, I can't believe that we actually did that. What is that one aspirational goal, that one unbelievable achievement that the business is going to come up with or create? And from there, and now we're creating some vision and some excitement about what we're going to do, how we're going to get there. And then ultimately, it's going to come back to the P&L analysis, the financial analysis. Where are we spending properly? Where aren't we spending properly? What levers are we going to move so that we can do the marketing and we can have the sales organization and the support organization in place? Oftentimes, a lot of the resistance is adding talent to the team. And I find that they continue, as if you're a family-owned business, you take so much responsibility on yourself and you don't bring on additional talent. You have no concept of succession planning and how you're going to grow the depth of the business. Cross-training oftentimes doesn't exist. So you've got a scenario where there's one person who knows how to do a lot of things and nobody else has been trained. There's no documentation. So all those things have to be in place to allow the business to grow and eventually achieve what they are capable of achieving. So you help them generate that vision on their own so they can take ownership of it, have buy-in, get excited about it. And then at that point, we come up with a strategic game plan for, okay, we know where we're starting. We know where we want to end up. How are we going to get there?
Right. I talk to a lot of business owners every single day, all across the board, right? I talk to like really enthusiastic people, and I talk to some that are just, really struggling with where they're at in life and trying to overcome that hurdle. And I find industry to industry, very specific kind of glass ceilings, right? That people kind of hit. For example, like the MSP business, the guys that, the local businesses that go out and fix computers, right? I see a lot of those guys get to $1 million revenue and they can't break that ceiling for some reason, right? And do you think that's inherent with the type of person that starts that kind of business, if that's where they want to grow to? Or do you think there's some kind of other, systematic thing that's at play there that, because when we all start businesses, we don't know what we're doing. Right. So we don't know about KPIs yet. We don't know. I mean, we're in our 20s, right? Sometimes I was in my teens, the first company I started. So I had no clue what I was doing. I just knew that I had a Yellow Pages and a telephone and a video camera, and I wanted to make commercials for people, right? So that's all I knew. And I picked up the phone and started calling. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. So is that a systematic problem in the education system for entrepreneurship? Or do you think that's just everybody gets to where they think they can get in life?
Well, I think there's a couple of comments I have on that. Number one, I believe that an individual will do the best with what they have, where they're at that particular moment. And an entrepreneurial spirit will go out there, take charge, take what they know. And as you said, they're going to give it all they've got through blood, sweat, and tears and do the best they can. And sometimes it'll work out. As you mentioned, the business failure rate for startups is astronomical. So those that can actually survive and continue to grow their business, those are remarkable people. Now, what happens is they've gone as far as they can go based on what they know. And until they get some other kind of support or somebody who can help them with strategic planning or show them where the holes in the boat are, until they get that kind of support, they've really hit that ceiling. And they need that support for them to grow, to achieve their true potential. And many of the businesses that I've worked with, that through our mutual planning and their hard work, we've seen double-digit sales growth. We've seen them take their net profit from single digits to double digit. I would say we've got to have at least 10% net profit, double-digit net profit, no matter what. But by having a plan in place, and then they start getting some traction, they see some success, they see some wins, they see clients growing, they see team members now knowing what their expectations are. That's a healthier culture there. They're having a lot more fun. They're starting to win a little bit. And you change momentum. And it's all their hard work that's doing it. But they have some idea and some hope now and some vision of where they want to go and how they're going to get there.
There's not many things in the world more gratifying. I say this about a lot of things. But if an employee is coming to work in a place that you've created and they're genuinely happy to come to their job, then if you created that, that's a rewarding ass feeling, right? It's
absolutely.
It is not something that you get. It's not a feeling you get being an employee or being a solo entrepreneur or things like that. You get a weird sense of pride and accomplishment if you can create an environment, a safe, healthy environment that people can come every day, share ideas, and grow together. I think it's
absolutely.
There's not many things in the world better than that, right? Than that feeling you get.
Well, and in a role as a coach, in that same vein, to see a business grow, to see people grow, to see success. Right. That's so
to know
gratifying.
You're a part of that is really fun.
Yeah. I love to see them win.
Absolutely. I'm a novice boxer, an amateur boxer by far, and I'm not a great boxer at all. I have a lot of fun with it, but I generally tell a lot of people, I'm like, it's hard for me to compete with you because I want you to win too, right? I want everybody to win, right? So I don't have that weird competitive spirit that performance athletes do. I just want everybody to win. I just want us to run together and it's like this amazing, weird experience of everybody's always winning. I know that's not a real world, but that's the world that I want to live in. So, and I think everybody can win at their level where they're at in their game on that day, right? And I think it's really important for people to have that mindset.
Yeah, as long as they know what winning looks like, then they can win.
Absolutely. And one bump in the road is not failing. That's not losing, right? No. That's just the game, right? We're playing this game. Overcoming hurdles is what you should love if you want to get into business.
That's right.
And figuring out challenges and those kinds of things. You might think in the beginning that it's, I love film, so I'm going to get into film, or I really love technology, so I'm going to start this technology business. That's not really what you're getting into. You're getting into a different world that you don't really know what it is yet. But you'll learn it. It will uncover itself as time comes for you. But it is really gratifying if you can pull it off. If you could be one of those 20-something% that succeeds past the 2 years. And at Clicks and Bricks, our goal is, reduce that number, right? Mm-hmm. Get that number to be more successful startup businesses in the world. And give people the tools and the tricks that they need to get there, right? Because it's hard, especially those first 2 years, man, because it's, you're dwindling your savings. Like your savings is going to nothing, and your revenue is growing up slower. It's a hard thing to do.
It's interesting. I'm working with a business right now that will remain unnamed, but a domestic business, and great young entrepreneurial spirit. And they're actually running, they're going to be approaching $3 million in revenue this year. So it's a fairly significant business. It's been in operation for maybe 4 years. And when I first started working with the owner, all the success they've had and all the growth they've had, said after our first Zoom session, he says, I've never had a discussion like this about my business my entire life. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And so he, again, is just the epitome of I'm doing what I can do with what I know, and I'm going to grow. And
right.
But I have no real idea what I'm doing. And I didn't know about strategy or tactics and it's like, and now just to watch the progress that this particular person and business have made literally over the last 6 months, it's astronomical.
Right.
And
I feel without these tips and tricks that, I think anybody can get a business to $500,000, $1 million, right? With just pure grit, hustle, and just chug. You love what you're doing, you can get there. But I feel like if you don't have these tips and tricks and strategies and tactics in these tools in your toolbox, that business is going to try to kill you, right?
Well,
it's going to try to destroy you as a person, right? Because you've built this thing that you love, and it's going to try to kill you, right? So you have to know how to manage it. And if you know how to manage it, then it can be this great pet that you have over here that snuggles with you every night and doesn't try to destroy your body. But if you don't have the skills, it will kill you, right?
You have to have that roadmap. And, one of the phrases I love to use with the teams is, plan your work and then work your plan. So stick to it. We know what we got to do. Don't get off into the weeds and the tangents and all the distractions, but you know where we want to go. Let's just follow the roadmap.
Right. So obviously wrapping up the show here, you've been doing this for a long time. COVID has shown us all kinds of new technology for how you do work, right? The majority of your clients are in Australia, so you're already familiar with this remote work kind of world. Where do you see technology bringing your industry in the next, 1, 5, and 10 years?
Yeah, great question. So obviously Zoom has been invaluable. I literally was traveling to Australia 9 times a year, spending 2 or 3 weeks at a time with clients on site. Now, there's great value in actually being on site because you can see a lot of things you would not see virtually. That said, I'm in a position now where I can conduct business with somebody on the other side of the world through technology that in the past I literally had to physically be there. So the efficiency from operations and being able to communicate with them literally on a moment's notice. I had one of my clients call me yesterday with an emergency. So we jumped on the Zoom for 25 minutes, did some strategic planning. Here's how we're going to deal with the situation. Done. I didn't have to be there at his place of business. We could see each other. We could share documents. It was a perfect scenario. And so in terms of the coaching industry, a lot of business that was done on site or in person, I think we're just going to continue to become more and more virtual. There's still always great value in being on site, at least periodically, to see what's going on, to talk to the team members, to, those leadership blinders that an owner might have. Fresh set of eyes comes in, looks at the business. We're going to see opportunities. So that still has to happen. But the ability to conduct most of your meetings, eliminate the travel time, and just be spontaneous and handle your interactions virtually, that's going to be a game changer in the industry. Obviously, in
Absolutely.
So many industries.
Absolutely. In the beginning of November, Mark Zuckerberg released that they're changing the name of Facebook to Meta. And I think the first week of November, Gary Vee does an interview with Mark on YouTube. It's a phenomenal insight onto where this metaverse is going to go and what we're going to be seeing. It's 5, 10, 20 years out kind of stuff, but it's really fun to talk about. And having a guy like, access to a guy like Gary Vee and Mark Zuckerberg sitting together for an hour conversation, I recommend everybody watch that video because it's got a lot of great insight in it. And, if Mark is not the holy grail of the planet, but, if he says, hey, we're going to move the world in this direction, you better believe it's at least going to take at least one turn in that direction, right?
That's right.
So,
that's right.
He's arguably one of the more powerful people on the planet right now because he controls what most people on the planet see. So, or he has the ability to control that, I guess. Yeah. So
he's an influencer for sure.
He's a major influence in our world and our society. So let's hope he continues to do that for good purposes and not evil purposes. But
yes,
the insights for the future of where we're going to be and where you need to be with your company are hidden in that video, right? Or not, they're not even hidden. They're just smack dab in your face. Augmented reality, virtual reality are coming. They're coming at a breakneck speed. And so what that means to everybody, in Web 3.0, you're going to have to update your websites again. You're going to have to get in this new metaverse because you're going to have to be there to be relevant, right? It's just the way it is. So thank you so much for your time today, Bernie. Do you have anything to leave our guests? Or actually, we have an offer for our guests, right?
So yeah, and by the way, thanks for sharing that video information. I'm looking forward to seeing it. That sounds very
it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. So basically with all potential clients that reach out to me, they can reach me through our website. They can find me on LinkedIn, Bernie Beck Jr., and or call me directly. My phone number's on LinkedIn as well. And for all potential clients, I spend an hour doing a complimentary session with them just to understand their business, understand what's going well, understand what their challenges are. And typically spending an hour with the key decision makers, key leaders of any business, I can pretty quickly ascertain what are the things they need to concentrate on, what are some of their strengths and weaknesses, and then potentially what could I do to help their business grow in a more positive direction. So whether that's sales, marketing, leadership, financial health, all of the above, how can I possibly be of assistance to them to help their business grow?
So, and I know people have seen these 1 hour free consults all over the place, right? Yeah. And I would say don't give it a shot, right? You never know. I'm sure that an hour on the phone with Bernie, you'll get some value out of it anyway, right? You're a busy business owner. You've got a lot of stuff to do. You're trying to figure out how to get to the next level. It might be you get some really great insight in that 1 hour, right? And then, or maybe do a small booking session or something like that. But it's important to reach out. The most important thing that you need to know is that you don't know what you don't know. And it's really hard to uncover that. I'm taking a really in-depth marketing course right now, and I know a lot about marketing and advertising, but it got to the point I haven't taken a class in 20 years, so I need to jump back into a class to figure out what are those nuances in that system that I don't remember anymore, don't know anymore. So continued education is always fantastic, and there's no schools for this stuff. So you got to go to coaches, you got to get mentors, you got to get those things if you want to push your business to the next level. It's important stuff. So
you've heard the phrase lifelong learning, and if you're going to succeed, become a reader, study, podcast, whatever, but be a lifelong learner, and you'll help yourself as well as help society. So
I'll throw you on the spot. Do you have a single book for our audience? Like, what would you recommend them read?
So Mike Abershoff's "It's Your Ship."
It's your ship.
It's your ship.
Fantastic.
So he was an admiral, and it's one of the best management leadership books. You get into John Maxwell and all the other traditional stuff, but It's Your Ship is an absolute fantastic, easy read, full of lots of jewels and treasures.
Fantastic. Thank you for that tip. Anything else to leave the audience?
No, just again, Ken, thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking with you.
Yeah, you too.
I look forward to 2022 and what that holds for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time today, Bernie. That's it for today's show, folks. Get to work.